Today is March 16th, 2021. I am Dr. Kashana Soldier, and I am interviewing Evan Bishop as part of the African American Oral History Project. Can you state your name for the record, please?
Evan Bishop, Evan Thomas Bishop. Gonna make sure I put that in there.
And where did you grow up, Evan?
Uh, Bronx, born and raised. Specifically, was born in on University Avenue, and did most of my growing up in Riverdale, New York, in the Bronx.
And who did you grow up with during this time?
My mother, my brother. Shout out to Charlotte Bishop, my mom's, to my brother Eric, older brother, and a slew of extended family, brothers and sisters who I've known them since 4 years old. So their family, their aunts and uncles to my sons. And yeah, so it was a large community that I grew up with in Riverdale.
And what was Riverdale like as a neighborhood? What are some of your fondest memories of growing up in that neighborhood?
Wow. Where I live was very strategic because Riverdale is predominantly a white neighborhood. But we grew up on a hill. There were three buildings on a hill called Skyview on the Hudson. And what made this location so dynamic was that in the early 70s, I'd say about 20 families kind of migrated there from different parts of the country all at the same time. So while it was a predominant Riverdale was predominantly white, I grew up around young men and women who look like me. So growing up, it was because we were on the hill. There was a strategic location. You know, mom's was like, just stay on the hill, and there was so many things to do. So we we engaged. You know, football, basketball, tennis, swimming, bike riding, baseball, not soccer, didn't do soccer, stickball, anything we can do athletic, anything that forced us to run. Me and my crew were in it to win it. So I had a good childhood. I would say that, you know, my mother made that decision to leave University Avenue early 70s because, you know, premonition, intuition, and just conditions around her made her realize that raising two young men on her own would not be the best choice to stay on University Avenue. So Riverdale, I grew up not really understanding the sophistication of being an adult, which was good because that wasn't my issue. I just wanted to be faster, stronger, and better than all the rest of my friends. So that was kind of the most important thing growing up.
And were there any sort of places that you regularly visited that you sort of remember that either are still staying today or that are no longer physically visible to the eye?
In Riverdale or just in general?
In general.
Well, my grandmother forced me to go to church until I told her I had a voice to say I didn't want to go. So, Riverside Church, you know, we are members of Riverside Church in Harlem. Um, my father's remains and my grandmother's remains are in Riverside Church. So a fond memory, I would say for me, is my grandmother's psychology. You know, she knew I was fidgeting, I didn't want to be there. So she would give me a pen and she would give me a program. And she would just say, if you keep it quiet, we'll go on the tour. And I knew what the tour meant. So I would just keep quiet, doodling, doodling, doodling until it was time to get out of church. And her tour was to drive down 125th Street right after church. And at that time, stores were closed, and I was able to witness and appreciate the work of Franco the Great, muralist in Harlem, world renowned, but his work mesmerized me. My grandmother would stop the car, let me go out, look at these murals. They were actually painted on the security gates of stores. And he would have images of beautiful Black people, brown people, big, huge. And that stuck to me. outside of my just growing up being a kid, you know, being quiet during church so I can go on the tour was like a big thing for me. Not my brother so much, but for me, definitely.
And
So
would
that's
you
a
say
fond
that
memory,
sort of inspired part of your work today? Was that those early
without question.
experiences?
Without question. I actually had the honor, my children were going to school in Harlem, and I had the honor of meeting him and just sitting, assisting him by passing him paints. And it was like, mind blowing to be around an artist like that. And it was really cool because he invited me to his studio. He said, bring some work. So bring my portfolio. And he was like, you don't need to be my assistant. You need to be out here doing it yourself. And once again, mind blowing was like, whoa, Franco the Great gave me the stamp of approval. So I would say that is kind of a structured memory, but growing up as a teenager, without question, it was hip hop. All aspects of hip hop. Before the MTV and all the glitz on the TV, it was, you know, someone getting a mixtape or a battle from something happening during the weekend. They bring it back to our neighborhood. Somebody has a box, you play the music, you hear these live rap battles. I knew that there was something special about it, but I wasn't articulate enough to even attempt to be an MC. So I stuck with my guns, which was graffiti art. So um yeah, growing up in the early 80s into the 90s, graffiti art, jumping on a train, riding the trains, going in the train yards, doing some magical things that my mother can now smile at because she sees it's going beyond that. So those are two fond memories.
And you just spoke about sort of your mother seeing your work go beyond graffiti. How did your
Yeah,
mother sort of react to your work and the evolution of that work from, like you said, graffiti to, some work that's changing communities?
sure. Mom's she's a college professor. She taught at BMCC for 40 years. She knew a lot more than she let me on to. But there was a very major moment that happened to me, I'd say probably around 15 years old. And, she knew something was going on. So her excuse for coming in my room was to do laundry. I wasn't trying to do it. So I was like, okay, go ahead. So she found a nice stash of spray paint that I kind of put under and around and threw things to make it seem like it was just a pile of mess. And when she found the spray paint, she didn't tell me. So I went into my room looking for my spray paint. I knew my brother wasn't interested. He was older. He wasn't trying to get dirty and all that. So it was a conundrum. It's like, do I announce that something is missing from my room, or do I just play like, okay, go on about my business? So, I'm nervous. I'm waiting for something to come to me that I didn't want, which is a spanking or punishment or something. But she did something truly revolutionary. The next day, she came in with 2 fans and a respirator. And her logic was, if you want to do this, do it in your room, which was like, you're gonna punish me and beat me as soon as I spray on my wall. She's like, no. The only deal, we have to make a deal. The days that you spray paint in your room, you have to turn the fans outside so the exhaust goes outside. You have to wear the respirator, and you can't sleep in your room that day, that night, of course, because of the fumes. So there was many, and I had to sleep on the floor in the living room, not the couch. Couldn't get warm and fuzzy on the couch. I had to sleep on the floor. So I found a nice way to make a little nest on the corner of the floor because I spray painted every day. So while my friends after school, they had to hop the train, do all of this extra stuff. Mom's was like, first of all, no friends. If you want to learn, you want to practice, you do it by yourself. And I tell you, I put in a lot of hours in my room, layer after layer after layer, practicing techniques, doing things with the spray paint, trying new things. And yeah, and she can't draw a stick person. which is so, it's not like she was even art savvy. She just knew that if she told me no, I would go harder. So instead of her telling me no, she said yes, but, and I rode with that. And when I look back and see a lot of my friends who got arrested for writing graffiti, and for other people who, because their parents didn't support them, they're off doing other things that they're really not pleased, happy with. Moms knew some things, so big ups, lottie dottie.
So your mom supported you, especially in your early sort of
Yeah,
experimentation. But are you able to talk a bit about what
absolutely.
inspires your work? What inspires you as you sort of create variety of work in different mediums?
Great question. I had to find a mission statement when I took a sabbatical from teaching, and the mission statement states, I am the self-proclaimed ambassador of the hip hop culture as seen through the eyes of a graffiti artist. So, but it's also the Black experience, because I grew up seeing positive images, not through the TV, but just through my family, positive images of Black people and greatness. So I knew that that was an extension of me. So I wanted to express it in the best way I knew how, which was through art. And even yeah, so, and when I had children, I knew that Disney wasn't going to give my children, they weren't going to be led by Disney. It was going to be through my hands. So yeah, what inspires me? The Black experience, me telling my story and other people's stories, and allowing people to see, when we talk about the negative stereotypes, I'm a creator, so I have the ability to create um, a different story, or a different angle to the same story. I made sure that I made a vow to myself that I wouldn't, I'm not into using my art to exploit. When I went through a phase of body art, I was very clear that I wasn't going to draw zombies. I wasn't going to draw bullet holes or blood on people. So Halloween, I closed shop because everybody wanted the ghouls, and that ain't really my thing. So yeah, so it's bigging up my ancestry. I have an obligation to use this hand to carry on the greatness. So I'm up for the task.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I want to sort of return to is you talked a bit about your role as an educator, but can we go sort of a
Yeah.
bit back and talk about your evolution from a student to being an educator, and how school and teachers and also you becoming one influenced who you are and your message?
I laugh because my mother being a professor, I remember visiting her college, and her letting me write on the blackboards. So that was when dry erase markers were early. So I would take these markers and do these elaborate schemes, and of course my mother would erase it and go on about her business. But it was so funny because as I'm writing it, her students would be like, "Oh my goodness, can't you wait to be a teacher? I know you're going to be a teacher." And I'd look at like, I don't want to be a teacher. That's my mother's job. And even with the marker, in my mind, I'm like, yo, I wish I can do this all day, every day. And, some people say, be careful what you ask for, but I think I can give thanks for what I asked for, which is using my marker most every day. But my educational background, mom's was a college professor. My grandmother, Alice the Great, she was a junior high school teacher in the South Bronx for 40 plus years. My great grandfather, Charles Isham Williams, he was an educator. He at that time it was called Storer College. It's now Virginia Union. So he graduated from there. Grandmom's graduated from Hampton. My mother stayed in the city, so she went to Hunter. But yeah, education was non-negotiable. It was expected, and I was proud to, my sons are, the fifth generation of young people who are, pursuing that college degree. So that's a legacy. That's a part of our lineage. So without question, education was always a part of my understanding of what's important to me.
Definitely. So you talked a bit about your experience in Riverdale and the Bronx, but what brought you to Yonkers?
That beautiful being named Katori Walker. Um, I was living in the Bronx, uptown, and I was cool. Whatever we were doing, we were getting it done. At that time when I met Katori, we were doing a lot of body art. We were really establishing ourselves as a body art team. I would do the artwork, and Katori, because of her estheticianal magic and her healing hands, she would give our clients kind of a mini spa experience, light massage, meditation, aromatherapy. So whoever sat in our director's chair would just go on this magical journey. And it was a beautiful combination. That was dynamite. We were going into places, and even if there was 1,000 body artists, there was only one team that was doing body art and spa, which was us. So our company, 320 Body Art, stepped on the scene. We called it 320 because we were both born on March 20th, which is coming up Saturday. So we, Brooklyn, Harlem, the Bronx, Manhattan, Uptown Manhattan, Lower East Side Manhattan. We were going to any place that would allow us to demonstrate and to provide the service of body art and healing touch. We were going to, and it was, we were hitting them hard. We were doing magical things, and I think Katori was tired of. One day she was just fed up. Like, we do all of this traveling. What about Westchester? And me growing up in Riverdale, if you look at the map, that's like right next door. That's right down the block. So growing up in Riverdale, I didn't want no dealings with Yonkers. I wanted to go downtown where the things were had. So I always looked at Yonkers as that place up north. Nothing to offer me. Everything that I wanted was further downtown or right there in the Bronx. But Katori, we had a conversation, and she was like, "Yo, we need to put our efforts into our own backyard." And I was like, "Yonkers?" She was like, "Yes, Yonkers." And then I just stayed silent and realized, she's been rolling with me for years all over the city. Okay, let's explore. So I moved to Yonkers around 2016. I moved in with Katori and her beautiful grandmother, Nana, Thelma Jenkins, and been here since then. And since then, we repositioned ourselves in the art stratosphere to really do what we're here to do, which is service. So what brought me here to Yonkers? Absolutely Katori Walker, but it was also the possibilities. I know that what I bring to the table is coming straight through me, so it's going to be unique wherever it's at. But there was a lot of untapped resources in my eyes in Yonkers, and hooking up with Katori and making this my home, we began to explore and see the possibilities and really benefit and come to love Yonkers. So I used to call it bonkers. That's when I was younger. Now I'm calling it Yonkers, my home. So Mayor Spano, please don't be mad at me for using those terms about this wonderful city of hills.
So you talk a bit about the service that brought you to Yonkers. Are you able to tell me more about some of the projects that you've worked on within Yonkers?
Oh,
service?
without question. So I realized that in order, I had a visual, and the negative visual was me walking around with my canvases knocking on galleries saying, "Hey, this is my art. I'm an artist. Can you please give me a try?" I wasn't trying to do that in Yonkers. So we, in 2015, I forgot, 2015, summer of 2015, we attended a grant writing workshop at Arts Westchester. And we met up with some artist friends. We made it a dinner hookup and chill session. But in that grant writing workshop, something resonated with me. And what I realized is that this experience of grants is what's going to allow Katori and I as a team to really make a name and position ourselves in the art scene in Yonkers. But let me rewind that a year before that. On our birthday, 2015, we had dinner with Nana. She cooked us a beautiful dinner, and we were just talking. And I was just still getting to know Nana, so I asked Nana. At that time I had just become a grandfather, so I said, Nana, if you were to share one word with my grandchildren, what would that one word be? And I'm eating, I'm thinking that's just she's gonna say one thing and keep it moving, and we'll talk about everything else. Well, this woman in her 90s, at that time she was 95, she put her fork down and sat back in her chair. And I looked at Katori like, oh, what did I do wrong? And she's looking at me like, I don't know. But what Nana said, the one word that she wanted to share, she said, I would tell your grandchildren, focus. And she went on for about 45 minutes explaining why focus was important to her life at different phases. It wasn't just like, well, because I'm 90, focus is it. She was like, when I was a teenager, focus. When I became a young adult, focus. When I became a mother, focus. When I became a professional, focus. Every stage of her life, that word, she found a relevance to it, and really articulated it. That moment stayed with me. Not only because I was like, ooh, I can share with my grandchildren, but also the magic of oral history, kind of like what we're doing. So fast forward back to the grant writing workshop, it was a Yonkers initiative, which means the grant was for it was Westchester. So it was, what art project can you bring to Westchester that we're going to give you a grant for? Now the money, I'm truly grateful, thank you Arts Westchester, but didn't cover a lot of things. But that was okay, because what we did, and it was a team effort, I just put my name on it as the principal artist, but Katori and I took our experience as body artists and we attached it to the oral history of elders. So the first project that I did, actually the first grant I ever wrote and the first grant I ever was awarded, was a project called 100 Words of Wisdom. And what it was a oral history of seniors. And so Katori, the one thing that they couldn't do, Arts Westchester didn't allow any, therapy or whatever. They didn't allow Katori to put her hands on the participants. So she flipped it and she used her journalistic skills to interview them. So while she's interviewing each senior, I was doing the body art. And that was I will never forget the stories. Some of these people are no longer with us on the physical, but their stories and really what they shared to my grandchildren and to all grandchildren, because the first question Katori would ask is, what one word would you share with children? And the challenge of it was that you couldn't repeat. So my mother was number 7 out of the 141. Her word was family, so no one else could use family. So once a word was used, it was locked in. So it was interesting as we got into the 60s, 70s, 80s, people would go with the usual words, but then it would really force them to dig deeper. And what was good about it was that they were really coming up with words similar like Nana that really resonated with them. So 100 Words of Wisdom was the first project. And so once the body art was done and Katori finished the interview, Katori took the pictures. So she gets photographed of photography credits for all the images, except a few. But it was a photo exhibition with my body art. So going back to my graffiti roots, my goal was always to make sure that the lettering style, the color combinations, the blends, all of that was reminiscent of graffiti art. I wasn't doing any typeface, anything. It was coming out 3D, shadows, all of that. So it was beautiful. And I was, at that time, I painted a woman who was 102. And I asked her, like, have you ever had body art? She said, never. So for me to paint on skin that's over a century old, it was so humbling. But all of them are our surrogate grandparents and, great grandparents, and they are elders who will always be held dearly in our heart. So 100 Words of Wisdom was the first one. Once we did that, because it was so going back to my visions, I didn't see myself knocking on a door as an individual artist saying, look at me, give me a chance. What I saw is 100+ seniors kicking in the door and saying, look at what he's done. So the seniors, the elders helped me to establish myself in Yonkers. So 100 Words of Wisdom, by far the most rewarding art project to date that I've been a part of. So I'm very humbled and appreciative of that experience.
So I'm going to take it from a different angle. So you talked a bit about the Black experience. You also talked about sort of generational knowledge. But one of the things that's come to the fore in the past couple of years is the Black Lives Matter movement. And I was wondering, with everything that you've experienced as a Black man, how does that movement resonate with you about any experiences that you may have had with discrimination or prejudice, but also the future for African Americans?
Um, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, there's a politically correct way to answer that. There's a responsible way to answer that. But Evan, I'm only speaking for this temple and the person, the being that animates it. I ain't got to tell nobody my life matters. I ain't got to ask permission. I believe as a sovereign being, I have every right to breathe this air, to walk this earth, and not ask permission from nobody. I don't condone the disrespect of anybody on this earth. But I realize, as a animated being in this melanated skin, as a male, this is the best I can get. This is it. I mean, I really don't know how to answer that. And while I realize the importance of support, yeah, I'm a little tongue-tied with that, as an individual. Yeah, it's a lot. So I'll just keep it at that. I hope I don't disappoint your interview, but I don't need to tell nobody. I don't need to chant anything. I just walk and breathe and be who I am. And all else will unfold the way it needs to. But
Absolutely.
big ups to our ancestors. Big ups to our ancestors who lost their lives because of savage acts. So I'm not in any way disrespecting those who were brutally slain. But I don't dwell in death. There's too many living experiences. There's too many great. I've done my research. I know I've done the homework. I know who I am. So what's happening at this space and time doesn't define me. And nor am I going to allow it to hold me into a paradigm that is in any way inferior to any being on this earth. So that's it.
So on the opposite side, what do you do to celebrate Black History Month, either personally or in your work?
I found When Amadou Diallo, going back to this whole thing with celebrating the ancestors, growing up in the Bronx, living in the Bronx, representing the Bronx, when Amadou Diallo was slain, murdered, I realized, I didn't realize, I was at a impasse. I was angry, which I'm no longer. But I wanted to do something, but I felt helpless. And a good brother, as my tribe in Riverdale, good brother I grew up with, Kofi, he sparked something in me, and he said, "Yo, why don't you paint a picture?" And there was someone speaking through him about that. So I found it cathartic to express myself through the paintbrush. And I realized that not everything that's going to come through the paintbrush is going to be, unicorns and rainbows. Some of it's going to be stirring. And as long as it's not just for shock value, but it's through true expression and celebration, I find a way to celebrate our loved ones and ancestors who are no longer on this physical. So how do I celebrate? I'm not a traditional dude, and I don't apologize for that. So Black History Month, for me, it's really celebrating all year long. Kwanzaa is every day. How can I do cooperative economics? How can I do collective working responsibility? How can I unify? I think of those things every day. So when structures designate a time to do something similar to my graffiti upbringings, I'm breaking the rules. I'm not gonna 1 month. I'm speaking for Evan. I'm not speaking for anyone else. Black History Month, I will participate, but it ain't really for me, because it's not a month, the shortest month of the year at that. So it's really, to me, it's a backslap to us to think that, okay, this month, let's celebrate. It's like, nah, that's what other people do. I celebrate all the time through my art and through communication and through supporting other people who have projects that resonate with me and that really celebrate our culture and our people.
So speaking about projects, is there any ways, whether on social media, on a website, that people can see your work beyond this interview?
Yes. Okay. At this time, the several ways. I guess Instagram is probably the best way because I'm a visual person. So if you want to see the 100 Words of Wisdom exhibit, it's the number 100 WOW_exhibit, 100 WOW exhibit. That kind of chronicles everything leading up to our big exhibit. 320 Body Art is another Instagram account that I've used to kind of celebrate that form of expression. So 320 and then Body Art. The project that Katori and I masterminded to get all of Yonkers involved, Yes Yonkers, is another Instagram that you can see leading up to the events. But the main one that I use at this time is Evan Bishop Art, EvanBishopArt, and that starts off with the ampersand, no, not the ampersand, the and sign. So those are the many Instagram accounts. I website in due time, had it, ran it, but there was so many other things I needed to do, so I kind of put that on the back burner. So yeah, if people want to get in contact with me, could DM me on that way, or I answer emails. So yesyonkers@gmail. So that's where it's at.
All right, and for the question I've been waiting to ask since you brought it up, what is one word you would use and want to share with our audience, and that as a word of wisdom?
Ascend. Ascend. Go to the next. I thought about that. In fact, one of the elders asked me, and I got stumped. And then the next day I called him up, I was like, ascend, ascend, ascend. So I think ascend because, you know, there's always another level. There's always another level. No matter what it is, there's always another level. So to ascend is to strive for higher. And that's what I'm here to do. Good question.
And for my last question, is there anything that you would like to share as final parting words with our audience?
Yes, Katori Walker will not let me live it down. Love her. Um, just to let you know, that grant for 100 Words of Wisdom was wonderful. But what happened was is that because it was just seniors 65 and up, a lot of people wanted to be a part of what we were doing. So the following year, we wrote another grant, and this time it was just for Yonkers, specifically and exclusively for Yonkers. So we created the project Yes Yonkers, and Yes Yonkers was a phenomenal bringing together of a community. I thought about, Katori and I had long discussions about how can we, as two beings, unify Yonkers. What I've heard from Yonkers, what I've known from Yonkers was always separate. This over there, that over there, this over there. Don't go there, go over here, and all of that. So our solution was through art. And once again, loving the culture I grew up in, which is hip hop, peace, love, unity, and having fun. Those were the 4 pillars of Yes Yonkers. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. So what we did is we the goal in the grant was to get 100 people to, I laugh because it's going to get higher numbers, 100 people to draw something on a 10 by 10 canvas swatch. Okay. And the theme, it had to be something to unify, your love for family, love for community, love for yourself, love for love. You can't do anything that ain't celebrating love and unity. So the goal was for 100. 1,178 swatches later, we completed the project. But what made the project so powerful was just the cooperation with the community. We went to every section of Yonkers. We found organizations all throughout Yonkers who said, you ain't got to pay anything. Just set up and do what you guys do, and we'll support you. Schools, all the Yonkers-based schools, the mayor did a swatch. The chancellor did a swatch. Politicians did a swatch. Professional artists did swatches. A child who just turned 1 year old did a swatch. I mean, we had blue collar workers. We had people who were homeless doing the swatches. We had, people in the healthcare industry. Families did swatches. We had, as I said, 1,178 swatches. And it was phenomenal because we gave a simple theme and there were no two that were identical. Everybody had their own way of expressing it, which was the goal. So if there was parting words, I would say to anybody watching that, we have many swatches. So the goal for the grant was to produce the art and then do an exhibit. So we were Yonkers Public Library, big ups to you guys, was gracious enough to allow us to display all the swatches as one body of work in the downtown, the Riverfront Library, which was phenomenal. So that completed the grant. We did a project, we exhibited, done deal. But Katori and I, we already knew from the very beginning, this has to be a continuance. So the goal wasn't just to say, okay, we did the grant, give us the money, take pictures and move on. It was to take portions of this of this quilt. It wasn't a real traditional quilt, but take portions of this big project and share it with the community. So right now we are seeking organizations and businesses who are interested in displaying a portion of this monumental project. I asked someone who was part of the Westchester Historical Society, had they ever heard of a project of such magnitude with so many people contributing to it? And, these are people who can, backtrack for, several decades. And I am proud to boast to say that we created the largest community art project in the history of Yonkers. But it's not just about us getting the glory, it's about the community at large coming together and really doing something dynamic. So anybody who's interested in displaying, we give all credit to the artists. But yeah, if anybody, businesses and organizations where, I don't want it in people's homes because that's individual. So if anybody's interested, yesyonkers@gmail. That would be of great service. Also, I guess you got me talking now, so I'm comfortable with this conversation. Katori and I are an art team. We are in a standalone art empire. So if anybody's interested in murals, we do public murals. We do portraits. We do community projects. We're here to serve, and I know that through my art, I'm serving a greater purpose than me. So that's what I'm here to do. So love you, Yonkers.
Evan, I want to thank you for sharing the essence of who you are, the essence of your service, of your legacy, of
Sure.
your genealogy with me and the community. And I am so excited for what the future holds, both for your projects, but also for how you work with the city of Yonkers. So thank you again for allowing me to have this great conversation with you.
You're very welcome. Yes, Yonkers. Thank you, Keyshawn. Appreciate it.